Lots of people like to decorate the inside of their homes with the lush foliage of tropical plants. An added benefit to growing houseplants is that they help clean the air. There have been numerous studies by NASA and other groups that show proof that houseplants remove harmful toxins from the air that we breathe. So they're great to have around. Well, I'd like to just share with you a little bit of information to help keep your houseplants a little bit healthier. Whenever we water our houseplants, whenever they're dry and we give them a drink of water, any of the water that comes out of the bottom of the pot, you can see some now starting to fill up that saucer, all of that water should be taken and dumped away somewhere. Dump it down the sink or outside or somewhere like that. That's because it has a lot of salts in the water. There are salts of sodium, calcium, and potassium that if they build up in the root ball, they can cause some problems for the plant's roots. Now, if we were just to water this plant and let that water sit in the saucer, what usually happens is that that water is drawn back up into the root ball as it begins to dry. So those salts again start getting concentrated in the root ball of the plant. Now, you know you have a problem with salts if you start seeing that white crust appear on the surface of the soil, or like we've got on this terracotta pot here, you can see all of those salts just built up on the side of this pot. Well, if you have that problem, you can clean that up with a little bit of a vinegar solution, and the next time the plant needs to be watered, just take it to the sink or to the bathtub or something like that and just run a lot of water through that soil ball, that root ball, to dissolve those salts and move those salts out of the bottom of the pot. Another thing you could do would be to make sure that you don't dump any coffee or soda or put any cigarette butts into the soil of your plants, because we don't want to build up any of those substances that are toxic. In the winter time, the plants that we grow in our homes can be stressed if we give them water that is too cold, like an icy bath of cold tap water is not really that great for our houseplants. Just like you and I wouldn't want to take an icy cold shower in the winter and sort of give us a bit of a shock. Well, that's the same thing that happens to our houseplants if we give them too cold a drink of water. So make sure you water them with water that is at least warm temperature. In the wintertime, a lot of our homes get to be lower in humidity because of our heating systems, and we need to give our houseplants a little bit more of a boost of humidity. So something you could do would be to take your houseplants into your bath or shower area and let them soak up all of that warm, steamy mist. A common mistake that a lot of gardeners make with their houseplants is that once they get them home from the nursery, they repot them. They either think they're doing the plant some good by doing that, or they want to plant the plant into a more decorative container. Well, the fact is that the plant can stay in this pot for quite a while unless it's severely pot bound. Now, you can pop the plant out of the pot and see if it has a large number of circling roots. In that case, it would be best to pot it up, but generally it can stay in this pot for quite a while. We don't want to pot the plant up into a bigger pot because overwatering is a lead cause of death in houseplants. If we get too much soggy soil around those roots, they can start to rot. Well, one thing you can do instead of taking the plant out of the nursery pot is to do a method called cache potting, or the pot-in-pot method. And by doing this, we just take our plant in the nursery pot and just put it down inside a more decorative container. You can take a saucer to collect any water that comes out of the bottom, and you can just maintain the plant in that fashion. Now, there's no way we would have been able to put soil in this wooden wicker type basket and plant a plant in there. It would just start to fall apart after a while. So it's a good way to take advantage of some of those pots. I also never recommend planting into a container that doesn't have a drain hole in the bottom. But with the cache pot method, you can just set a plant with a collection saucer on the bottom down into those containers that don't have those drain holes. And if you wanted to do a little bit of extra decoration, you could take some Spanish moss just to hide the top of that plastic pot. It's a good idea to periodically inspect our houseplants to make sure they don't have any pest problems, especially here in the winter time when we've got lower light levels and the plants may be experiencing a little bit more stress. Well, three of the most notorious of the houseplant pests are spider mites, aphids, and mealybugs. We've got a good example of spider mites right here on this rose plant. Spider mites usually show up under really hot, dry conditions, and you can see the symptoms right down here on these leaves. You kind of get this stippling or this kind of speckled situation going on here, and that comes from the spider mites piercing the leaf mostly from the underside and sucking out the fluid. If we turn the leaf over, you can see all those spider mites, those red spider mites congregating there on the underside of the leaf. If we really have a bad problem, we can even see webbing on the plant, sort of connecting the leaves and the stems and areas like that. Sometimes the spider mites are hard to see, so we have to get a white sheet of paper, hold it underneath the leaf, and shake it and see if any of those spots start to move around. Well, some of the things we can do to take care of a spider mite problem would be to periodically hose down the foliage of our plants, just wash away all of those mites and their eggs as well. But it's also important, even if we're doing the hosing off of the foliage, to apply an insecticidal soap to dry out those spider mites. And it's a good idea to apply this about every week or 10 days. That way you can take care of the adult spider mites and later on take care of any eggs that will hatch. Well, aphids are a succulent insect that will pierce the leaves of plants and suck out those plant juices. We usually see aphids congregating on the stem tips. So sometimes if you've got a bushy plant and you've got a lot of aphids around one of the stem tips, you can come in and just pinch that away and get rid of a lot of aphids in that fashion. You won't be able to get rid of all of them, so it's still a good idea to come back with the insecticidal soap and just completely douse the plant again every week to 10 days to get those eggs and those young aphids that will be hatching and coming along. Mealybugs are one of the hardest houseplant pests to get rid of. They look like little globs of lint or cotton. Also usually see them around the tips of the plant, although they can be pretty much anywhere on the plant. We can treat this with our insecticidal soap, but another thing we can do to help get rid of the mealybugs is to treat them with some rubbing alcohol. Just take a cotton swab and dip that down into the alcohol, get it nice and wet, and then we come up here to our mealybugs and just douse them with the alcohol. You can see it changing color there, and they're pretty easy to kill if you can touch them, but probably a combination of alcohol and the spray with insecticidal soap would be the best way to combat the mealybugs. Now this is a gardenia that we brought in from our patio to keep indoors over the winter, and a lot of these plants, a lot of these patio plants like the gardenias, the tropical hibiscus, and some of those, they're not supposed to look good in the house in the winter time. We just want to keep them alive. So as long as we can keep the plant alive and bring it back out, it'll give us a lot of enjoyment out on our patio or outside our home.
We hope you've enjoyed this classic from the Oklahoma Gardening Vault. Remember, even though these tips and techniques are timeless, there's always something new to learn in the world of gardening. By subscribing to both Oklahoma Gardening and OK Gardening Classics, you'll have access to a wealth of gardening knowledge, both classic and contemporary.